it's like, years later I will get emails or, from people who I've given these DVDs to. So it's cool,
Yeah, I mean, I've found that activism is mostly a thankless job, really.
Yeah.
But there are those moments when someone actually does, make the effort of, either approaching you physically or communicating in some other means their appreciation. But yeah, I really respect the act of having the bravery to just pass someone a piece of information that if they absorb objectively, then they will encounter a train of thought that can really make some positive changes. Because, like say, for example, when I was with my ex, she would always have a go at me if I gave someone a leaflet or a DVD. If I was talking to someone else, and if I gave them a DVD, she would always shoot me a look as if to say, God, are you doing your activism thing again? Why don't you just give it a rest?
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
I'm surprised that relationship lasted as long as it did.
Yeah, me too.
My deal is I didn't get any girlfriends. I was like, no, my girlfriend is going to be a zeitgeist girl, because I was so obsessive about activism that I needed somebody that absolutely shared my desire to see, the change I wanted to see in the world. So otherwise I couldn't be dealing with what you were dealing with there. Like, eyes being rolled. Are you really doing this again? No, yep. I couldn't, yeah.
Yeah, I've come to the point now where I've made that decision for myself as well. If I'm going to get with anyone, I mean, even though I'm not really decided on the issue of monogamy. In fact, one of the episode that I did for UK Collapse Radio was talking about whether human beings will be monogamous or polygamous or whatever in a resource-based economic model. Because currently I'm going through a series of really obscure questions or topics that aren't really covered much in TZM's materials. I mean, I think the next one I'm going to do is about animal management and, whether we should have pets or, ideas for any sort of wildlife sanctuaries or, enclosures or whatever that we should employ.
That's great, Adam.
Yeah, because that's the thing, that sort of thing isn't really covered much in the Zeitgeist Movement's materials.
No.
So just thought I'd give that a stab,
Well, I would imagine that we would see more polygamy in an RBE because of the fact that a lot of relationships are dependent. They're together because they are dependent upon one another, a lot of times through financial means.
Yeah.
Or resources, whatever it is, And so if people were not attracted to others for scarcity reasons or abundance reasons, if everything was abundant, you had just access to everything, we would see I would imagine a much more fair, I don't know if fair is the word I'm looking for, but natural, I suppose, natural partnering up as opposed to for purely, attraction reasons, not just for, look, this person has, money, they can offer me financial security, I'm going to be good for them and not stray because I'm dependent on this financial security.
Yeah, I think that was the one that I spent about an hour and a half talking about. And basically I went through all the environmental and socioeconomic conditions that would be present and what effects they could have. And essentially by the end of it, I just said, well, people will be whatever they will be. Because, even though there is strong evidence that, say, for example, the freedom of movement that a resource-based economic model would enable and facilitate, a lot of people would think, people would travel more and they wouldn't be tied down to specific places, and as such, they would possibly, copulate with multiple people. But by the same token, that also doesn't necessarily mean that polygamy will be the natural gravitation in that condition, because if you're free to go wherever you want, unencumbered, then you'll have a larger interaction with other human beings, and thus you will form a better choice of the one person you want to spend your life with, if that is your persuasion at that time. So
I like it.
Yeah, the arguments for or against, they're equal. So,
Yeah.
it will be whatever it will be. But, for one thing, we will make decisions for better reasons, for actual good reasons, because we're not having to make decisions, as you mentioned, because of financial reasons. I mean, I dare say one of the main reasons why doomed relationships drag on for as long as they do is because they have a house together, they have a kid together, there's other monetary, well, not necessarily monetary, but socioeconomic restrictions that are placed on their freedom, which says, right, well, even though we may not love each other anymore, it's better for us to stay together because that way we can carry on existing, let alone actually living,
Right. And it's the idea. It's that idea. It's like, even though we are in a unhealthy relationship right now, it's either one of two things. We're too scared to separate for socioeconomic reasons. It's like they choose the lesser of two stresses. It's either the stress of kind of starting over, or that fear of that stress of starting over, losing some things, some items, whatever it may be, that you share, whether it's, of course, in an RBE, those don't even have to exist, don't have to come into question. So relationships I don't think they would last as long. I think people would cycle through partners more often because those reasons would no longer exist.
Yeah, because I mean, one of the things that Stefan Molyneux in his one of his podcasts, it was called "How to Meet a Nice Girl," and I've referred to this podcast quite a few times on I think my other podcasts or on some of the UK Collapse radio shows. But it is an awesome podcast that you can download.
I've listened to it.
Yeah, and in there he says that as we're able to grow and mature and thus evolve, we become different people at different points in time. So really, in that kind of unrestricted environment, monogamy is also polygamy at the same time, because neither of the two people in that relationship stay the same. Both people, respectively, become different people over time. So over the course of, say, a 20-year monogamous relationship, if neither of you have any restrictions, then, if you do choose to stay together for the right reasons, as Stefan said, you date thousands of women at the same time because they're all in the same body,
Wow. That's pretty heady. It's like what I found is probably one of the reasons why I'm really attracted to polygamy, or I would just say non-monogamy, is that reason is that, when we feel a change coming on with ourselves and we want to express that new change within us, those who are closest to us fear that change. They don't understand it. Who is this person? You're acting differently now. Who are you? I want the old person back. Absolutely. I'm not sure if I can still share the same sense of humor with you. So I'm not sure how to now act and respond around you. So, Yeah,
it's a big bundle. I mean, that's another facet of it that I should have covered in my podcast, but I didn't get around to it because I was facing all these mounting sort of facets of it. I'm just like, I don't want to be here for 3-4 hours. I don't want to go on for too long. It's I think it's something that can definitely do with a roundtable discussion as well. Because I did have the idea quite a while ago of doing a series of roundtable podcasts. And having, the song Knights of the Round Table from Monty Python as the intro music.
Nice.
But, I'd say that, when you do change, it does affect the people around you. I mean, it's inescapable because we're social beings. We have, the the neurological basis for that, inherent empathy that we have is known as mirror neurons. That's our empathy circuits. So, when we interact with each other, there's a tendency to sort of lapse into a certain groove of being a certain way and thus expecting others to be that certain way that they are. So, it can raise dramas. I mean, but then again, by the same token, it can also encourage more extensionality because, like, say, for example, if the person starts off the relationship as a very introverted and closed individual, but then they change and become more extroverted and thus more engaging, then that's positive as well. So, I mean, how would you say that you alluded to it earlier, but in general, how would you say that the people around you, their perceptions of you have changed over time?
Well, for me, Adam, there's like a radical change that I went through over the course of a year, and I made a strong intention that I was going to attract new friends that were more understanding, more creative, more open, more caring, and so ever since then, and also, like I said, I would pass around DVDs with everybody I would come in contact with. That way, any friendships that I made, we were entirely on the same page. I would also, kind of qualify all my agreements to times and places with, this may change. If it's my highest joy, I will be there. So what I started doing is I started carefully going about my relationships by communicating what my preferences are, what my nuances were, what my priorities were, and so that I wouldn't find myself getting stuck or stressed out in relationships. Does that make sense? Because that so often happens.
Yeah, I mean that completely makes sense. I mean because I've watched a few of your shorter videos where you've got the camera in the dashboard and you're driving at the time, and in some of those videos you've expressed your tendency to just be open and honest with the people around you, and that that is the best way to be, and I completely agree that is the best way to be, because even though there's a reason why honesty is the best policy can be classed as a cliche, but it's a cliche because it is true. However, there's only one example that I could think of where honesty would not be the best policy. If you were in Nazi-occupied Germany and you were harboring Jews, if that was the situation, your moral task is to lie your arse off. So
that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But other than that, honesty is the best policy, and I've found that that is a good way to be, because at least then people's first impressions of you are at least informed instead of self-formed within their own sort of filters, as it were. I mean, so many people have that tendency to sort of
self-form.
Yeah, and they like putting labels on things. I mean, I've spoken to so many people who, they started off and even as they were speaking to me, I mean, like, say for example, in one particular scenario, I've known this person for all of 3 minutes, and and they're asking me, "Are you a socialist then? All right, are you a communist then?" And I'm like, "No," and they try to ask these questions and try to put me in a little pigeonhole, as it were. And I'm just like, look, if they tried to say, "Oh, well, if you're not a capitalist, you must be a communist," and I'm like, I'm sorry, have you heard of black or white fallacy?
Nice.
And it's otherwise known as a false dichotomy. Have you heard of it? But yeah, I'd say, I clash a lot with people because I'm